Hello! So today I am answering a question from a viewer and she submitted it in the form of a video. She is so sweet. Her name is Anna and her wife is attending mortuary school, and Anna really wanted to know, how do I support my partner, my spouse, while they are in school and when they become a funeral director? And this is such a great question. You know, I think it's good for every partner, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, and whoever you are to support your loved one. But within this business, it is hard. How do I support them when I don't know what they're going through every day? How do I support them best when they're studying, when they're learning, when they're doing all these things? So I love that she has asked this question. She's so sweet. So from my perspective, I'm going to share a little about kind of my relationship paths I went through on my journey through school and as a funeral director. And I'm going to share some advice and tidbits from multiple funeral directors and spouses, partners that I have talked to recently. And I have a video clip from one, and I think this is going to give a lot of good information to you to help you, Anna, and anybody else, be a good support person for your loved one. So my story, when I went to mortuary school, I was 22 years old, 21, 22, something around there, and I was engaged at the time. I thought I knew what was going on with the world. So I headed off to mortuary school. Very shortly after being at mortuary school, I realized that my relationship was not what I wanted in life. And it wasn't pertaining totally to school and everything, but being around all the like-minded people, being around people who were like me, who had the same interests as me, who found joy in helping others through this vocation, and who were just on the same path. I knew that I was not on the right path with the person I was with. So pretty quickly after starting mortuary school, I broke off that engagement. And after getting my license, becoming a funeral director, I did meet somebody and got engaged and got married. And that was more because I thought it was what I had to do at that age. And unfortunately, that ended in divorce. I think no matter what my job, that would have ended in divorce. But we did always have some serious fights about time commitments and constraints, because when you go to dinner, if you're on call that night, you may have to leave before you get your food. Or going to a movie, you have to leave 15 minutes after it starts, and they typically aren't going to give you your money back for your ticket. So you learn to go on dates in certain ways because you're on call. Or you go with the flexibility knowing you may get called to go do something else. Or you have dates at home and you get creative and you do, you kind of just live in a different way. It's very freeing when you're not on call, because you're like, oh my gosh, my phone may not ring. But when you are on call, you definitely live in a different way. You can't have 4 cocktails and live it up on a date night or on a Saturday night, because you are on call and you may have to go in and have to then go on removals. So you just learn to live in a different way. And as a partner, you have to learn that your person may not be able to whoop it up with you, but hey, they're a designated driver for you on a night that they're on call. So that's a positive, bonus. But so I was divorced and a licensed funeral director and kind of figuring out my own way. And I met my current husband, Andy, and we were not the likeliest of match. But you know what really kind of connected us in the beginning was the fact that he at the time owned a snowplow company. And he literally was at Mother Nature's mercy as to when he was going out to work. It was in the winter, and so, he was on call essentially because of the weather. And so he understood, because it was his business, that I'm on call because of Mother Nature as well. That I may get called out, I have to check my phone. Sometimes things change and you have to kind of fly it by the seat of your pants. And he understood that. And that was kind of one of the first connectors for us, because we had come from relationships that had been an issue with our partners. And so that was kind of our first common bond, that we said, okay, that's not going to be an issue with us, because we get this, we understand this. So let's check that off the list of things we want in a partner. And so yes, now we're married. We've been married 7 years, and the job has never been a fighting issue with us. The getting called out, those things have never been a fighting, because we understood from that initial beginning. So when a relationship begins and you're not in the business and then you go to be in the business, definitely can be a game changer for the relationship. But if you meet somebody and they're already a funeral director and that is their schedule, you're going to learn them and get to know them already in that mode. So those are definitely two big things that you're either gonna you're gonna jump in that relationship and they're gonna not like your schedule, and so it's going to end quickly, or you may deter a relationship by going into the business because somebody doesn't want to share you in the way that you need to be shared with this job. I'm going to do another video just solely with my husband, and he can kind of give some of his own pointers, tidbits about the business down the road. But so I want to share some things from other funeral directors, partners, spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends with you guys. Now, before I read a lot of these tidbits that people have shared with me, I wanted to kind of break down a little bit more specifically some of this. So, very cliche, you need to give support and encouragement as a partner. Plain and simple. This is across every career, every opportunity, everything you do as a partner, right? So you want to give encouragement, you want to support your partner. Now, let's put this in perspective and give you a couple examples here. Your funeral director partner comes home from just sewing up the chest of a 2-year-old child who died. What is support and encouragement going to look like? You can't high five them and say, hey, you were a rock star funeral director today. Well, maybe you can, if they're in the right mode. Typically, that's not going to be what you're able to do, because it kind of downplays and offends the fact that they just had to suture up a chest of a 2-year-old. So over time, you're going to learn how your partner responds to a lot of these situations at work and the best way for you to support them during that time. Because your initial might be, oh, I'm going to make them dinner, or I'm going to do this for them, or I'm going to do that. But when they get home and they don't want anything that you've done for them, you get hurt feelings. They might get pissed off because it's all about you now, because your feelings are hurt and they just had a huge emotional day, and it can go down this, you can see it's kind of going down this slippery slope. So as you're communicating and as you're figuring each other out in those situations, you will learn maybe what your partner likes or doesn't like. I can tell you, if I come home from a really bad day at work where I've either dealt with a bad customer or I've maybe had a hard emotional day like a 2-year-old child or something, sometimes I just want to retreat and I need some quiet time. I need to mentally process, what did I just see, or what did I just do? Because just because you're doing the actions and your body can do those motions doesn't mean your mind and your heart and everything connects while you're doing it. So you may be able to do that, but then 2 days later, all of a sudden you're emotional and you're crying and you need to be held, or you don't want anybody to touch you. And it's this late settle in emotion that sometimes affects us after the fact, because we do what we need to do in the moment, but then later the emotion sets in from it. So we may need to just have some quiet decompress time. We may need to just hug the kids. You may need to hug your dog. You may need to hug your cat. You may just want to sit quietly with your partner. And sometimes you want comfort food. Sometimes you want brownies. Sometimes you want whiskey. So maybe you and your partner set up a system where you're like, hey, I took care of a 2-year-old today. You text your partner and they're like, okay, do you want 1, 2, or 3? Do you want me to have some comfort food ready, some brownies ready, or a whiskey ready when you get home? And not saying you're going to need any of those, but maybe you set up a system with your partner that they can communicate to you what they need, so you can maybe have something ready if you want to do that for them when they get home, and vice versa, because you're going to probably have crappy days too that you're going to need some brownies at the end of your day. But in that cliche, support and encouragement, you can see how support and encouragement looks really different for a funeral director. So sometimes it's just a hug, sometimes it's being there when that person's ready to talk, sometimes it's distracting them. Maybe they just want to come home and be distracted and go do something fun and go, out to the bar that night, or go see a movie, or just get out of their headspace so they're not sitting and thinking about the fact that they just sewed up a chest of a 2-year-old. So it may look different. One week they might, want to do this. The next week they might want to do something totally different. So it's really communication and letting them kind of be who they need to be in those moments. And those moments may not include you. And don't be offended by that, because they cannot explain to you what those feelings are. Always. They cannot explain to you what sewing up a chest of a 2-year-old is like. So they may want to go have a beer with somebody from work after work instead of coming home to you, because that person has maybe done that and walked that path and been through that kind of thing. Maybe they need to decompress with them. So be understanding of the fact that they may seek support from somebody that's not you to talk something out with, because it's easier than to try and explain to you what sewing up a chest of a 2-year-old is like, if that makes sense. So I'm going to get my papers ready here, some information from some different people within this business and their spouses and such. So Amber says, I can only add some insight of going into mortuary school while being married from my husband's point of view. Her husband said, personality changes may happen and available time will change, but don't take it personally. There's obviously a lot of stress coming from all angles, and the person is trying to do good in school. They're trying to focus on school. They also have to, he says, they also have a family to take care of and keep the house running. So there's a lot more stress on that person while they're in school. As a spouse, know that her decision or his decision to go back to school means a team effort to make it work. When I knew my wife had some intense assignments coming up, I'd take the kids out for the day so she could have some peace and quiet at home to power through them. I obviously have no clue about anything relating to mortuary school, but I was easily able to read off flashcards and help quiz her. And I love that he found a way to do this together and to be a team with her, even if it was just quizzing her on some of her testing things. Small notes of admiration and encouragement were also placed around the house. Praise plenty and often. She is a rock star. I couldn't be more proud of her. That's awesome. That warms my heart that he says that. So Chrissy shared, I've been a funeral director's wife for 20 years. We moved to Cincinnati so Corey could go to mortuary school with a 3-month-old baby. So they've uprooted, moved to Cincinnati to go to CCMS with a baby. Being 3 hours away from home, I realized that the people Corey was going to be to school with for the next 5 quarters were going to be our family. So being the good wife that I am, I kicked him out of the apartment one night to go to the party and meet some people. He was going to make friends. Little did I know that some of those new faces he would meet that night would be in our lives 18 years later. Be supportive. Be able to make and change plans in a moment's notice. Being the spouse of a funeral director means that birthday party plans get canceled. because someone's mom just died and they have to run out of the house to go pick them up. It means having your phone ring all hours of the night. It means long days and longer nights. It means them coming home from a stressful day and telling you about what went wrong in the prep room, to how unreasonable a doctor is being about signing a death certificate, to how the flower order got messed up. But you being the spouse needs to realize that not everyone can do this job. Not everyone can be there in a person's darkest moments and bring them hope and peace. Be supportive. Don't complain when they don't have a day off for 2 weeks. They want to be home with you as much as you want them home with you. My husband has picked up 100-year-old grandparents, infant babies who have died right after birth, car crash victims, to people who have committed suicide. Not a lot of people can do that at school with Kari. So I am one of those people who loved on their little baby and is now really against the fact that he is a freshman in college, because that makes me feel old. But you meet a lot of people in mortuary school who you carry with you for life, because like I was saying, that initial bond is the first time you're around a huge group of people who get you and who understand you and who know why you're doing what you do. Because there's a lot of people in your life who don't understand why you're doing it. So definitely hold on to those friends from mortuary school. Heather says, it's been a long process, but our school offered to work with me as I really did not want to leave my family to attend full-time school for the year. Even though it was a longer process, I was able to get a lot of time spent on the classes, all online while working full-time at the funeral home. The final semester I had to do on campus, and by the time I was to head off to school each week, I was well aware of the support from my family and community. One day, right before a test, I received a call from my daughter's school that she was really sick and needed to come home. And her husband was also away for work. I knew I had community support though, and it took one call and it was taken care of. Basically reassure the person that the goal is achievable and you can make an impact if you just stick with it. Our family used FaceTime between the iPads all the time, or texting when the kids needed something from school. Don't be afraid to bring home takeout. So don't feel like you have to still be a cook every meal mom or a do this dad or that dad. You need to give yourself some flexibility and give yourself an out by bringing home takeout once in a while or letting dirty clothes lie on the floor. It's only for a year going to school, or a little longer for the prereqs. Let yourself be you. Let yourself be a student. Let yourself do that part. And study your butt off, pass your tests, and become a funeral director. Worry about the dirty clothes and making every meal from scratch later.
Hi, my name is Alex, and my girlfriend is attending the Pittsburgh Institute of Mortuary Science. Today I have been asked to give you guys some advice on how to help your significant other get through mortuary school. I would say number one is just to be very supportive. Make sure you go on dates, get out of the house, do something to help them get their mind off of all the stuff that they see, all the studying they have to do. Just, helping them out any way you can. Get yourself a hobby. There's going to be a lot of studying involved, and they're not always going to have time to hang out with you. So pick up a hobby, get out of the house, go do something else when they're needing their study time. There's going to be a lot of stuff that they go through, a lot of things that they see, and it's your job to just kind of be there for them and give them a hug and kiss at the end of the day. It takes a special person to do what they do, and though you might not understand what's going on all the time, it's your job to just help them adjust, I hope these tips have helped. Good luck to you and your future mortician.
Nicole says, the biggest advice is be supportive. Take on some of the other person's responsibilities. Her husband offered to get the kids out of the house when she needed extra study time, take them to their activities after school, and of course take on any housework that the person can't do. Plan, plan, plan. Both be on the same page with schedules, events, meal planning, shopping. It really needs to be teamwork when a spouse is taking on courses. Communication and teamwork has to exist. I am not sure how I would be able to do it without someone close to me cheering me on. And this goes from even school into being a funeral director. You're going to have a flip-floppy schedule sometimes where it's every other weekend, or one week you have this day off, the next week you have that day off. You're going to have need to have a pretty clear-cut calendar and schedule laid out on the wall in your phones so that your teammate knows where you are when, who needs to pick up the kids, or the kids need to know where you are when. So learn while you're in school how to plan and lay out a calendar and schedule things with your partner. Ty says, my wife and I both went to mortuary school. I had more credit, so Regina was 6 months behind me. She and I have totally different learning skills and perform better in different subjects. We both do well at all of it, but our specialties are different. He said, I may be a crutch for her. As they studied and did our work and were able to go and do things where he was doing something first, and then when she came along after, she would maybe rely on him a little to say, hey, this is what is coming, or this is what you should do. But he said, I didn't interfere with her, and she didn't interfere with me. They both have graduated and make a great team working at a funeral home. And their daughter is going to mortuary school. So they have been able to give her different views and advice as she goes through her school. I would say no matter how hard the school or classes are, it is better to push through on your own. Learn it for yourself. We covered on raising the kids while the other one would be in an embalming station. We're assisting a funeral home, and we did not go together to get these skills. That school was tough and took a lot of time out of our lives, but it was well worth it. I think that's a great point too, is this is a fraction of your life is going to school. And even when you're in school, it seems all consuming and it's hard, and it is. But I've had other students tell me, just plan that you're giving up a year of your life towards school. You can have a social life and do all this other stuff when you're done. But go to school, focus on school, be in school, get it done. So every story does not end up well, like mine, broken engagement and divorce, but I know that this person wanted to really share their story. Even the time it took me to actually write this is indicative of how this industry has taken over my everyday life. I have wanted to be an embalmer since I was 7 years old, and me and my partner discussed the pros and cons of what my new schedule will be like. Seeing as we were still saving for our wedding, she was engaged at the time, I decided to stay working full-time while I was in school. And she's in Canada, so that means 34 hours a week of class, not to mention homework and studying, which gave us approximately 6 hours a week together. This is where our strain began. Second semester of school, I quit my full-time job, meaning my shifts, and took on a removal company position, meaning her shifts were 48 hours long on call, and I was now living part-time in a different city than my husband. They had gotten married during that. By this time, we were obviously married and did not take a honeymoon because we didn't want to take time off school. During school, my husband was definitely more understanding of my lack of free time, but once I started my internship, he really started to feel he was second to my career. I'm not saying that everyone will put their lives second, but it's hard to put into words the commitment you feel when you start off in the industry. He felt second to the families I was serving, and like he was getting what minimal leftover energy I had. It's hard to explain to someone who isn't in the industry why you have to miss your family dinners and holidays, because you're spending them with a family in need, and why your 8 to 4 shift often turns into an 8 to 8 because you couldn't just leave the case you were working on, or the family you saw the day before was counting on seeing you again, but you had other errands to run first. The funeral industry really contributed to my divorce because it's a selfless career choice, and no matter what is at home, the families you are counting on, the families you see are counting on you. You can't just tell the lady who lost her husband of 70 years that you can't stay at work late to go over details because your husband is whiny that you're late. It just doesn't work that way. After about 6 months of my internship, my husband accepted a job in a different province, and we drifted apart. My marriage lasted a total of 1 year and 2 months. Do I regret it? No. Would I have done anything differently? No. And I think this is, I'm not going to say she has a mistake, but this is often something when you start in the business, you don't feel like you can ever turn families over, and you want to stay with them, and you want to do this, and you want to go in on your day off, and you want to go in on your weekend off because you want to see a family again. And you do learn over time the flexibility of some of that, and that you do have to walk away once in a while, and you do have to turn over a family, and you do have to understand that they're going to be cared for just as well by the other funeral directors that are there. And it is a hard lesson to learn, and it's not always easy to do. And I'm not going to say I still do it sometimes where, you know, on my day away from work, I'm answering calls, I'm calling families, and I'm doing things because I want to make sure it's done to my standards and to the level that I want things accomplished. So you get caught up in some families, you get caught up in some moments, and it's not every time. You learn over time that you don't need to be that self-involved and dedicated 130% to every family you serve. But especially in the beginning, you do feel that way. You feel like you have to go in gung-ho 180%, and sometimes it does. You starve your family from your presence and your affections because you're giving them to other families, and you do find the balance and you do find what works for you, and it depends on the funeral home you go to work for and, you know, the schedule that's set up and all of that. So have, as a partner, some grace for those beginning first year or two. Has some grace that they may be working at the wrong funeral home, and that schedule and stress may be just the funeral place that they're at and not the business itself. So keep that in mind as well. Communication and understanding, as I've said, are the biggest factors with all of this. You have to have that in your relationship for a relationship to succeed anyway, and especially when one of you is going through mortuary school and into this business. As a partner, you can be as involved and understanding about the business as you want to be. Maybe you don't want to hear about the chest of a 2-year-old being sewn up and the process and the emotion. That's your prerogative. But if your partner really needs to talk about that, you can either choose to be the one hearing it, or they're going to maybe have a friend or somebody else that they can rely on to be that support person for some of those situations. So that's up to you and your relationship setup, how that is going to look. Relationships are not always going to work, whether you're a funeral director or going to mortuary school or not. There's, what is it, 50? It's a 50-50 chance in today's society that it's going to work. So go in with the best version of you can be. Keep your priorities straight. You're going to retire from being a funeral director, but you're not going to retire from a marriage or a long-term relationship, hopefully. So understand that this is your job. Your marriage and your partner and your family is your life. So keep your priorities straight. Keep what is important, important. Thanks, guys, for all the tips that were shared with me and all the information. And Anna, good luck. You are so sweet, and you have such a genuine heart with your wife, and as long as that stays, you two are going to be great. Share with me everything that has worked or not worked in your relationships if you're in the business. I really would love to hear them, and share them below in the comments. And because other people like Anna are going to be reading these and want to know what helped you when you were going to school, any kind of school. What helped you with having your partner around? If you have a emotional kind of time-consuming job, I know I hear from a lot of nurses, paramedics, doctors, law enforcement who have that same kind of emotional, adrenaline, time constraint job. So share some tips below on that as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you share, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.